which creepy urban legend turned out to be true. When I was about 12 years old, a friend and I were playing in the woods that were known for being creepy. While building a fort, a strange man snuck up behind us and yelled at us to get off his land and never come back, yada yada. It really startled us, as we knew the land was a public area and had never been threatened by an adult before. Several years later we found out he was an actual bank robber, wanted by the FBI for years. We were building our fort a few feet from his stash. Here's the news article about it. Wiki page Carl Gagasian. For the last several years in Toronto, gay men have gone missing in the village. The community was convinced it was a serial killer on the loose, but the police said no. These murders' disappearances are unrelated. Turns out that's totally the case, and the guy was killing gay men, dismembering them and burying them in and around the properties he was working at as a groundskeeper/landscaper. Not to mention that they also have to track his vacation/out-of-country work records and see if his killings went across the border. It's absolutely insane. The Griggstown Cow. A supposed ghost cow that wandered New Jersey. It was said to only appear on foggy days, and would disappear soon after. Local authorities discounted reports of the ghost cow, of course, as there had not been any dairy farms in that area for decades and no one was missing any cattle nearby. Then in 2002, a very old and arthritic bull, which matched the description of the ghost cow, was found stuck in a ravine. The old bull was unable to climb out of the ravine on its own, and, due to the animal's poor health, local veterinarians decided that euthanasia was the best option. The cow must have escaped a dairy farm and lived in the wild for decades, and avoided humans all that time. It's assumed that the bull was seen during fog because it couldn't see people coming as easily. How old is the legend? The average lifespan of cattle is only about 20 years, so if the story is older than that, it's most likely not just that one bull. Source: I grew up on a farm. Black Volga. In the 60s and 70s, there existed an urban legend in Poland that vampires in black limousines were kidnapping people, preferring little children. It was a tale parents told their kids who would then tell their friends, etc. Turns out it was a rumor that was spread by the Polish secret police, who actually used black cars to kidnap people. The aim was that no one would believe someone who would report they had witnessed a kidnapping. I remember being wary around all black cars, since I'd never seen a Volga. Also, I heard the version of the tale where they would kidnap people to steal their organs, and then dump their bodies by the road. Which is messed up. This version of the story was even told here in Germany, at least back in the 90s. We always had to stay away from black, polished cars if we wanted to keep our kidneys. Raymond Robinson, the Green Man. Dude lost his eyes and nose and wandered the streets at night in Pennsylvania because he couldn't go outside in the daytime because of how he looked. People saw him and an urban legend in PA was born. Edit, Grandma. In Liverpool, kids are taught about Purple-Aki from a young age. He's been locally known and feared for honestly 3 decades. He likes feeling boys' muscles and makes them do squats. He's completely real. He's even had court orders against him preventing him from feeling people's muscles. I hope you get by Purple-Aki is a common insult, and a very real fear. Akinwale Aerobic is his name. That is the weirdest Wikipedia article I've ever read. I went to a university near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. It used to be a POW camp and a military hospital before the college bought the entire property for $1 in the 1960s. Since there are really only 3 universities near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, it will not be hard to deduce which college it was, lol. Anyways, there was a rumor that underground tunnels and all sorts of stuff was left abandoned in the abandoned sections of the college. Sure enough, it was true. We found a tunnel hatch under our carpet in our dorm room, 2 hatches on the first floor, furthest most first floor dorm room of each building. It was literally like stepping into 1945. Everything was preserved down there and the tunnels were massive. We eventually ended up in an underground garage where there were 4 Jeeps parked, but all the tires had dry rotted. We realized this was actually beneath our soccer field. Anyways, the tunnels lead to the cafeteria, the admin building, every dorm, and then an old abandoned section of our campus that we had no way of entering topside. We soon realized this was the hospital/morgue. When we got out of the tunnels and walked the floor, it was still like 1945. All the hospital beds were still there, the surgical curtains were still there. Hell, even the tools, like the scalpel, saw, pliers, etc., were still on their trays. It was like everyone all of the sudden up and left and nothing had been moved since then. The morgue still had its slabs and sometimes we would dare each other to slide in there for a period of time. But yeah, it was an urban legend on campus until 3 of us decided to risk expulsion to see if it was true. And it was. The North Pond Hermit things would go missing in this little vacation community and people attributed it to some mysterious dude. Turned out there was one. He lived out in the woods for 27 years without ever talking to anyone. Edit, he said hi to a hiker once during that 27 years. Best friend he ever had. Actually, he did talk to people. He said hi to a random hiker once, and that was the only time he talked to someone else during those 27 years. Out here in Washington there were rumors of a fairy house in the woods somewhere. One park ranger decided to go hunting for it and he actually did find a tree house in the woods. When he looked inside he found a ton of child pornography. He took it down and came back a while later and found it had been put back up. They eventually found who had been using the tree house and arrested him. How dumb would the person have to be to put it back up again in the same place? Cropsey. Sort of like the boogeyman of Staten Island. During the 70s and 80s kids on the island would go missing and the urban legend would attribute it to Cropsey. As it turned out there really was a crazy kidnapper and serial killer who was responsible. He was caught and convicted. There is a great documentary about it, used to be on Netflix, not sure if it still is, called Cropsey. Check it out if you get a chance. When I was a kid, my dad would take me and my brother to High Rock. It's a neat overlook and we could play on the rocks. It was fun, but also a little sobering, as much as things can be for kids, because a girl had died in a hang gliding accident if I remember right. As you drive up to the parking lot for the overlook, the road continues on into the woods. We asked our dad where it went and he told us that you'd be driving down the road and suddenly armed guards would pop out of the woods to stop you because there was a secret government base there. That's the case, except it isn't really secret. It's Raven Rock, which is a nuclear bunker that can act as a remote Pentagon if the country is attacked. Cheney went there during Sept 11 while Bush was taken somewhere else. You will be detained if you trespass on the property. I went back to High Rock a few years ago while visiting family, and while hanging out at the overlook a truck of teenagers showed up. They asked if I knew what was up the access road and I told them Raven Rock and not to keep going because they'd be detained. They decided they wanted to check it out anyway. An hour later when I left High Rock those kids had not come back yet, so I figured they were getting their asses chewed out by a soldier. Fun fact, Raven Rock is the headquarters of the Enclave in Fallout 3. The rumors that Sir Jimmy Savile was a pedophile. It's now estimated he abused 500 children. And further to that, while still unconfirmed, the rumors, which he started, that he molested corpses while having, now confirmed, unsupervised access to NHS mortuaries are now more substantiated. He hid his paedophilia very well by looking exactly like everyone imagines a pedophile to look. Dr. T of the Incredulous podcast, on God Awful Movies podcast. That there's something making people disappear in our area in Nevada. As a kid it was more so they were hinting at aliens. Then as we grew up the disappearances have been a little too eerie and it's been suspected that there's investigations that have been going on as to whether or not there's a serial killer in our area. I carry a firearm when traveling through and don't stop until I get to the cities. If you guys are ever coming through just don't stop for anyone, especially after the darkness sets in. When I was young living rural Ontario we were told as children not to wander too far into the forest, saying that a monster would get us and we wouldn't come home. If anybody knows who Rockdayo is, that actually turned out to be painfully true. We had an older couple that would come into the store I worked at when I was 15. They clearly had mental development/mental health problems, and the rumor was they were siblings and the two teenage girls with them were their children. About 5 years later I'd find out someone had called the state about them, and turns out, from what I remember, to be mostly true. The parents were apparently the result of incest, and they carried on the family tradition, as it were. I think the state removed their daughters and put them in state custody since they weren't able to take care of themselves, and I don't remember what happened to the parents.